What are we making today?
We're making pizza.
Pizza! What's your favorite pizza topping?
My favorite pizza topping is definitely the cheese.
The cheese. That is very good. I happen to love red onions and olives in mine. And why do you think it's fun to make pizza from scratch?
I think it's fun to make pizza from scratch because you get all of the thrill of using the knife, using the rolling pin, putting on the ingredients.
Yeah. And choosing your own topping.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I think so too. Are you ready to start?
I'm ready to start.
Give me a high five, chef. Amazing. Hello, kids. Benvenuti, ragazzi. Welcome to our Pizzetta Pizzazz class. I'm so happy to be in the kitchen with you. Let's talk about what you're gonna find in this kit. We send you some all-purpose flour for the pizza dough, some tomato sauce seasoning, Parmesan cheese, and tomato sauce. But you're gonna need a few other things that are very important for our recipe, and they are some pepper and salt, olive oil, the Greek yogurt or regular yogurt for the pizza dough. I think you need a little bit more cheese, and very important, our colorful, delicious pizza toppings. In our kitchen, we have 3 tenets, and tenets is a fancy way for rules. They are simple, but they go a long way. The first one is keep your body safe. Today we're gonna be working on the stove and in the oven. There's heat involved, and we'll tell you when to get an adult to help you with that. We also gonna be working with a knife, and we like to say, keep your knife in chef's position, which means is safely resting on your work surface. Our second tenet is keep your mind open. And that can go so many ways, right? But for us today is keep your mind open on what kind of toppings, what kind of new flavors you're gonna bring into this class today. Make it a rainbow. Maybe you can even make it a game and go in a little scavenger hunt in your fridge and see what can be incorporated in our recipe. And the third one is cleanliness is awesomeness. Can I hear you say, cleanliness is awesomeness? That means that we clean as we go. We have an organized, tidy workstation. And let me tell you one of my tricks. I keep a bowl and a little towel just right by me. And as any spills happen, I can collect that. I can get any scrapes of food in there. And actually, all our packets are compostable, so you can put them in the bowl and compost everything later. All right, I think we are almost ready to get started. But what do we need to do before we start cooking? We need to wash our hands. So if you haven't done that yet, press pause, go wash your hands, and meet me back in the kitchen. As you will see, a lot of what we do in the kitchen can be summarized in 3 activities: prep, make, and taste. Prep in kitchen language means to prepare, and there's many ways to do that, and I will be telling you about that. But in preparation for our pizza, I would like you to get your adult and ask them to turn on the oven to preheat to 475 degrees Fahrenheit. Very important that the oven is ready and hot when we're ready to put the pizza inside. We also ask you to put your baking pan, or even if you have a pizza stone, that's great, to preheat as well, because we want that surface to be pretty hot when we're working. The other way we prep is doing something called mise en place. And I'm gonna ask you to repeat. If you have an adult with you, you guys can look at each other, or you can just say that to yourself. Mise en place. And that is a French expression to putting everything in place. Let me show you my mise en place today. I have my vegetables ready, the ones that I chose for this pizza. I have pre-measured the yogurt. We're gonna be using a half a cup. I have already opened the can of tomato sauce and put in a jar. You know, for us chefs and for me, this is a way to put a little bit of order in the world and look so pretty. Don't you agree? Now that the prep is ready, let's move on to the make. And for that, you're gonna need a bowl where we're going to be mixing the pizza dough. And also, you probably need a little spatula. So here's my dough, my bowl, my spatula, and reach out in your box and you will find the Pizzetta dough mix. And before we go too far, what's pizzetta? Why we're not calling this pizza? Pizzetta is a small pizza, and we're gonna be making 4 of those. So at first, we can just carefully add all the flour into our bowl. You can keep this cup to play with later. Actually, you can keep your entire box. There is a whole activity to transform that box into a play fridge. It's really fun. You're gonna have a lot of fun doing that. All right, so I have my flour in the bowl, and I have pre-measured a half a cup of Greek yogurt that I'm going to add there. You know, you don't have to stress out if you don't have Greek yogurt. You can use just regular yogurt, no problem at all. In fact, you could even use milk and add a little bit of olive oil, and you would get to the same thing. Very important that we also add a little bit of salt. You saw that I mixed a little bit. Now I'm reaching to my salt. And I think we gave you a measure, a half a teaspoon. But you know how I measure a half a teaspoon? I get all my 4 fingers and I dig into that bowl and I get a nice big pinch. I know that my body has learned that that is the amount I need. We're gonna be learning that, and hopefully your body's gonna be learning how to measure things too. We're gonna start by mixing the yogurt, salt, and flour with a spatula or a spoon even. And once you have something that we call a shaggy dough, which means it will look a little bit like what a scrambled egg would look, and there's not so many dry bits of flour, then the fun gets even better and we can get our hands in there. I'm not getting my hands in there right away because it's gonna be really sticky. Now, I see it looks a little bit like cottage cheese or scrambled eggs. I'm gonna clean up my spatula a little bit, put it on the side, and get my fingers in there, and I squeeze it together. So, to my young chefs and the adult sous chefs, depending on where you are, how humid the environment is, maybe it's a rainy day, your flour will be absorbing some of that humidity, some of that water in the air. And you're gonna get a slightly more wet dough. On the other hand, sometimes we use a yogurt that maybe we measure a little bit less, or for any reason, your dough is not completely coming together. I think you should always feel free to adjust the measurements a little bit. No one should feel kind of tight into and caged into a recipe. A recipe is just our map to an adventure. And as we develop this language, as we learn how to thread through this adventure, you will learn that you can also be modifying things. I want you to feel that freedom. It feels really good. So I think that, look at this, I almost have a ball of dough. This is the next step of dough making is so important. That's the kneading, okay? Can I hear you say kneading? And you may knead inside the bowl, and it's gonna keep everything cleaner. I want to put my dough in a surface so I can show you a little bit better how I knead. But before I do that, I'm going to use my dough as a mop and kind of get all the little bits of flour. So this bowl is almost clean, okay? So I'm going to set this aside. And I'm going to set also this spatula out of my way so I have a clean and tidy workstation. And check out how I knead, and you might find your own technique. But for my younger chefs that you're not so strong yet, if you put one hand on top of the other, you're going to have more strength here. And then I put my weight down and press into a pancake. Then I roll it back into a ball. And I press into a pancake, and I roll it back to a ball, and I press it again. And we're going to be doing this for about, I would say, 3 minutes. It's a while. So this is like, you know, you could bring some fun. Maybe turn on a song, and that's the time. While that song is playing, you are kneading. The moment that that song is done, you might be done with it. There's always an opportunity to have fun in the kitchen. So from a science perspective, because we all love science, right? I love science. I want to tell you what's going on here. And I'm going to be using some big words. And maybe you don't understand all of them. But maybe your grown-up is going to be happy to learn that. But in the flour, there's 2 molecules that are also called amino acids. And they're 2 building blocks. And they live there separately while the flour is dry. Okay? And those 2 amino acids are called gliadin and glutenin. You don't need to remember that. But once you add the water kind of forms a bridge that brings them together. And when the gliadin and the glutenin are together, they form something called gluten. Gluten, everybody has heard about gluten, right? Gluten is a protein, which is another kind of molecule, all big words. But the important thing about gluten, it forms the structure. It really gives the dough this ability to stay together. When the gluten just forms, it is pretty tight. And I want you to think about, has anybody ever played with a rubber band ball? When all the rubber bands are rolled up, isn't that pretty tight? So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to form a mesh in there that is going to hold this dough together, okay? Another thing that I haven't mentioned to you that was already in our Pizzetta dough mix is there was something called baking powder. Okay, can you say baking powder? So baking is for baking and powders. And what is the role of baking powder on a cake or on a bread? Baking powder is what makes our cake or the bread gross. And how does it do it? More science, kids. You see, like this is the way I like to learn science. So baking powder has a certain characteristic or a way of being, let's say, that when it combines with the yogurt, it will form a different, like another molecule, but it will release some gas. It's almost like it's bubbling up. And that bubbling up mostly happen when in a hot environment. So what happens here is we are forming the gluten, that mesh that keeps things together. And we're also going to give opportunity for the baking powder and the yogurt to kind of play with each other and bubble up. And those bubbles are what make your dough rise a little bit, okay? If you didn't have that, when you make your bread, you would have a very, very flat bread. And in some cultures and in some other recipes, we do want that. For our pizza, we want a little bit of fluffiness, right? Beautiful. So keep on working, keep on pressing. You really want to put some strength. Let me see that muscle, okay? Let me see those strong arms, boys and girls. You got this. And you're going to ask me, Chef Vanessa, when is this ready? I'm getting tired. Don't tire. It's okay. It will be ready when your dough starts to look pretty smooth, okay? My dough is almost there, but not quite. I want to work a little bit more with you guys. Keep at it. If your song is over, maybe it's time for a story. Or maybe you just can work quietly. That feels good too. I love working with my hands, and making dough is one of the really fun ways to do that. Another way to know that your dough is ready is when you form a ball and when you press a little bit on it with your thumb. Not a big press, just a gentle press, and the dough kind of bounces back. I'm going to show that to you in just a moment. So I'm going to roll this up into a beautiful ball, okay? I take pride on everything I do in the kitchen. It's fun. And then I press a little bit with my hand. Look at that. Should we do that again? I give it a little thumb press. Bounces back. Beautiful, ragazzi. We are ready to put this dough to rest. And Chef Vanessa, why do we put the dough to rest? Because remember that I told you that the gluten is a tight rubber band ball? Imagine you trying to stretch that ball. Is that easy or hard? It's hard, right? But when you put the dough to rest, it relaxes, that gluten relaxes, and it will make our job rolling this pizza a little bit easier, okay? It's also important that we wrap this dough either in plastic or we have a kitchen towel on top so it doesn't get dry. Some people even like to paint it with a little bit of olive oil. Should we do that? I think we should. I'm gonna get my olive oil. Just some fingers in there, nothing crazy. And I'm just gonna paint the outside. A little bit of olive oil. Feels very good. Okay, now it's ready to go. I already have a piece of plastic or saran wrap, or even you could reuse a plastic bag in your kitchen. You don't have to have a brand new wrap. And this is ready to go rest. Chef Vanessa, do I put that in the fridge to rest? No way, Jose. We're gonna leave this outside while all that stuff is happening. We will prepare our sauce and our toppings, okay? Please press pause, put your dough to rest, and meet me back here in a moment. Great job making that dough, ragazzi. And I keep on saying ragazzi. Do you know what that is? That means boys and girls in Italian. And, you know, pizza, Italian, so we can learn a few words. So now we're going to make our sauce. For that, you're going to get that tomato sauce that we sent in your kit. And as I said, I have already gotten out of the can, and I have in a bowl and ready to go. And you're gonna find a little saucepan. We're gonna warm that up and add some spices to really season that. Can I hear you say season? Yes, season, and that means to bring more flavor, okay? So we can go ahead and add the tomato sauce into our saucepan. And check it out, I'm using a spatula. That means that I have kind of nothing left in that bowl. And please reach into your kit and find the tomato sauce seasoning. And what we added here was a little bit of salt, a little bit of brown sugar, and some other spices. So this could be an opportunity to engage another sense, which is your smell. So before you even put it into the sauce, smell it up a little bit. And I think there's some oregano in there. I can smell it. And you can just add that into your sauce. Remember that bowl that we had where we keep all the scrapes? You can add that packet right there. And we're gonna bring this to a stove and we're going to simmer. Another new word. Can I hear you say simmer? Yes, simmer. And simmering means when you cook in a very low heat, the lowest heat you can manage in your stove. So I'm gonna turn this one on over here. And I'm gonna make as low as possible. So let's stir those seasonings. And we're gonna let it simmer for, I don't know, about 10 minutes. If you have a stove that has a very low simmer, 10 minutes is perfect. If you cannot manage that, as soon as this bubbles up, you can turn it off, okay? We don't want to let the sauce dry up. We're gonna need all the sauce for the pizza. Beautiful. And you see, were you a little bit puzzled why I added some sugar into the sauce? Isn't this a salty, savory pizza? The sugar and the salt combined, added to the tomato sauce, will give a fullness of taste, will make your taste buds feel this really delicious. And do you know where your taste buds live? Can you show that to me? In your tongue and all around the tongue. And those are the little cells, the parts of your body that get in the taste of food, okay? So we're gonna be talking about taste buds a lot. So once all the seasoning is mixed in, go ahead and put the top on your pot. Put the heat all the way down to a simmer. And you can put your timer, or you know what? This is a good opportunity to talk to your sous chef, your adult sous chef, and you can put them on sauce duty. That means they are keeping an eye, so when the sauce starts to bubble up, they can just turn it off. Does it sound good? All right, let's do that. You can press pause just to get that going, and we're gonna meet back here to start working with the pizza toppings. I will see you back in a flash. All right, beautiful. Our dough is ready. Our sauce is either simmering or we have turned that off. The oven is preheating. Now it's time to chop our toppings. I'm so excited. All right, but before we got into chopping, let's talk a little bit about how you hold your knife and how you work with the knife, okay? It's very important. So I have a fancy chef's knife, but you might be working with a kid's knife and everything is good, no problem. But the action is the same. So we like to say we start with a pinch grip, and a pinch is just like, it's really a pinch with your thumb and index. And you hold on the area where the blade and the handle meet. This area is called the bolster. Sometimes has even a little, very handy little groove in there. So you pinch grip the groove and then you wrap the other fingers around the handle. That's my pinch grip, okay? That makes it safe and stable. The other hand, we're gonna be using something we call the bear claw. And what is a bear claw? We wrap or we turn the tips of our fingers inward. So these little flashy parts of the fingers are out of the blade's way. So let me show you how that works in action. I'm gonna be using a tomato for this, okay? So in this case, check it out. I have the pinch grip on my tomato. oh, sorry, I have the bare claw on my tomato, the pinch grip, and I have the tip of my knife on the board, and I can just go right down. But you know what? My knife is very sharp, okay? So that's easy for me to do. Remember that bowl for the scrapes? Keep that close by. So I have my bowl for scrapes right here. If you don't have a sharp knife, and adult sous chefs, if you're working with a young chef that has maybe a serrated knife, a butter knife, the action that they were gonna do is a back and forth, and we call that the seesaw with their arm, okay? So the same motion with the holding hand, and for some of the adults with very young kids, maybe you are the one holding that object, okay, that vegetable. And then they will just have the knife parallel to the surface and go back and forth, okay? Back and forth, applying a little bit of pressure until they get down, and then you get out of the way, okay? The other thing I want to say is, you see how this tomato is a little wobbly? As soon as you have a flat surface, it helps to put your vegetable on the flat surface so that's not moving around, and it will help young chefs feel more confident and a little safer there. So for here, I still want like little half moons of the tomato. So I have my pinch grip and my bare claw. I'm gonna go down here, and each one of these halves are gonna be here on the surface, and I can keep on going, okay? So whatever is your first vegetable, if you wanna press pause and work on that, you're welcome to do it. I'm going to finish chopping this tomato, and we're gonna move to our second vegetable. But before I move on to that, I wanna say I'm starting almost like a paint palette. This is where I'm gonna put all my toppings, and I'm gonna organize them in a pretty way over here. And that will help our young chefs just pick from that what they want to be using on their pizza later. So there's my palette. Remember I talked about having a towel to clean the surface between vegetables is a good idea to give a little wipe to our surface, collect any scrapes. If our knife ended up, the handle is wet, makes it slippery, you can dry it. I will dry my blade, and look at this. I'm back to a perfectly tidy and clean surface. The next vegetable I want to show you how to slice is a bell pepper. Why not? I love bell peppers. You know, bell peppers have so many good properties for our body. They make our body so healthy and safe, and they are crunchy and delicious, right? So I have a special way to cut them, and I want to share that with you. So maybe you can just pay attention to what I'm doing now, and if you're gonna do one, you can press pause after and do your own, okay? Check it out. This is the stem part, right? This is where the bell pepper attached to the plant. And this is the bottom part. So just so you know what I'm referring to. I'm putting my bell pepper on its side, and I'm gonna cut the end or the bottom part, and look at this beauty. Look at this. This will make a really pretty topping on the pizza. And I'm gonna put this aside. And then I'm gonna cut the top part. So hold your bare claw, you're using your pinch grip, and I'm cutting the stem part off. Beautiful. The stem I will discard. This part I may chop a little bit more, okay? We can put that part on the side. Now I have a bell pepper that doesn't have the top and doesn't have the bottom. But what you can see here, check this out. And I want you to take the time to pay attention to this, because this is Mother Nature's beauty right here. You see, this is the part that holds the seed, and there's these little bridges that connect the seeds inside. So what I would like to suggest to you when you're cutting your bell pepper, you can put it on one of the ends, stand up on one of the ends, and cut down right by where one of the bridges are. And you open a little bit. And check it out. Now you see where the other little bridge is. And you may need a help from a grown-up here, okay? and you're gonna carefully just cut through that so this can open. And we're unrolling this bell pepper almost like you're opening a book. These little ridges, they're not so yummy to eat. I can discard that. And then look, like I got the new bridge here. I'm gonna cut that off, keep opening up, cut one more off, and voila. All my seeds and the pith are freed to go to the compost. I will cut just this one little one off. And I have, it's almost like a bell pepper fillet, okay? So now we can go ahead and just cut it up. And you have these pieces that are flat and really easy to work with, all right? So now you can just put it on the side and carefully slice that up. Wasn't that easy? And now you have a beautiful way to cut your bell pepper. So if you have a bell pepper today, why don't you press pause and practice what you just learned? That would be great. And remember what I told you? All of this beautiful stuff is going to go into my palette plate. A very important thing. When you get your kit, we send you all these other things inside. And one of the things is we sent you another recipe for a delicious salad. I love a little green salad with my pizza. So when we're slicing up these veggies, maybe we're not gonna use all of them as a pizza topping, but they become the perfect salad to go along with your pizza. Or even better, they become the perfect snack to munch along as you cook. When I started cooking, one of the main reasons I wanted to cook was because I could eat before anyone else in the family. I just love to have kind of that little bonding I had with my grandma. She would always give me a little morsel. So this is very important. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish up the bell pepper, and whatever is left you can use as a salad or you can use as a snack tomorrow. So, you know, it's nice to have healthy snacks handy when we are going to school or going to the park, or just when you're hanging out at home and have a fun snack that you know you prepared. Beautiful. All right. Now I have one more vegetable to teach you. But what did I say? Between ingredients, why don't we clean up a little bit? My hands got really wet from that delicious, crunchy, juicy bell pepper. I'm drying them. I'm wiping my surface. I'm wiping my knife. Any of these little scrapes go into that bowl that we keep close by. And let's move on to the next. We're going to red, orange. Let's move into some yellow, okay? And this is kind of like an unusual topping for a pizza. Can anyone tell me what this vegetable is? Did I hear that? Yes, it's a squash. That's a beautiful summer squash, and it's so nicely yellow. So for this squash, I'm thinking of doing some pizza art, and that might be my son. So I'm just gonna cut into just little rounds, okay? So that is really easy. I'm not gonna use the stem, so I'm gonna put the stem away. But I can just go ahead and do a little bit of that slicing. And let's go over that again. If you have a young chef that doesn't have a sharp knife, make sure that the young chef is using the seesaw movement, okay? And I want to show you something. Look at my arm. It's not like we don't just do this kind of limited movement. We move the whole elbow and the whole arm, okay? When you're working with a young one. So I'm just going to do it here. So back and forth and pressing it down. And adult sous chefs, if you need to pre-cut a vegetable just to help your young chefs be more successful in their activity, I think that's always a good idea. And I will shortly give you an example of that, okay? And I think we have enough suns for today. That is going into my beautiful palette here. And we can move on to the next vegetable. But what we do before, between vegetables and ingredients, we do a quick cleanup and a quick wipe, okay? Now we have a clean workbench. And you know who calls workbench? Scientists, when they're working in their stations and they're creating something. And we use the same language here because I do think that there's a lot of science, as we already talked today. So I'm gonna move on to one of my best preferred, just all-time favorite vegetables, the mushroom. There are so many different kinds of mushrooms. And today we chose a brown mushroom, which in Italian we call it crimini. Can I hear you say crimini? Crimini, yes. So mushrooms, they have some funny names. And so here you will see two parts. The top part kind of looks like a hat, and it's called the cap. You know, like you would put a cap on your head. And the bottom part is the stem, okay? What I like to do is to either maybe hold or put your mushroom on the table, and you're gonna wiggle. You will wiggle your stem until it comes off. You see, that whole stem is off. All of these little scrapes make a great broth later on. So I don't throw them away. I actually collect all of them, but we're not gonna be using that for the pizza. And now all you have here is the cap, all right? So you see how the top of the cap is wiggly, right? But if I put it on the bottom, it stays a little bit more firm. So we're gonna put it down, hold with our bare claw, and go ahead and slice it, okay? You can use the seesaw method, or we can use just a slide down. I want to show this again because there's a different way to hold that mushroom. So first I'm going to add those little slices to my palette, and let's do it again. What do we do first? We wiggle the stem, okay? Wiggle, wiggle. We're going to either discard that or save later on for some soup. I put that on the flat side. And then, you know, I haven't talked about that, but we can also, sometimes if something is too small to hold with your bare claw, you can make a bridge. Check it out, or a rainbow. You see how my fingers are holding this and making a rainbow shape? Yes. So that's another way to hold it. And I'm gonna put that down, and the knife, it's like almost like a bolt going under the rainbow. The knife goes right between that rainbow, and then it comes down. Beautiful. So now I have my two halves. I can do that again, okay, with the rainbow grip. If I want this shape, or I can keep on doing that other shape we were doing before. Kids, I have been cooking for a long time. I actually started cooking pretty seriously for my family before I was 10 years old. So if you see me doing something quick, it's because I've been doing that for many years. And one day, that can be you teaching a young person all these tips and tricks and the adventures that you can have in the kitchen. Beautiful. I think we're good with the mushrooms for now. Do you remember what we do? We wipe and clean and make sure it's tidy. And I'm gonna move on to purple. Yum. Onions are delicious in pizza because they have a lot of sugar. And when you put them in the oven, that sugar caramelizes and gives this really savory aroma and a mix of sweet and spicy. So it's a great addition, but you might not need a lot of onions. So Remember I was talking to our adult sous chefs how you can set up your kids for success? Here, I don't need an entire red onion. I just quarter this red onion and I have a little piece, okay? And for the very, very young ones, we can go one layer at a time. It's perfectly fine and easy, okay? So pinch grip, and I'm just gonna go a little up and down motion, okay? For my slightly older chefs, you may just have all these layers stacked up together. You're holding firmly and you're sliding down. If your knife is not sharp enough, you're using the seesaw, okay? And something I haven't mentioned yet, part of the fun and the privilege of being in the kitchen, sharing cooking time with an adult, is that you get to try. So when you are making your little palette here, maybe you can also, if that works, you can have a little plate for the kid where they can have just like a few things that those are their munching pieces, okay? You can just have the stuff aside. So they're eating as they cook, they're not getting hangry, and they're starting to get a little bit of a feel for what toppings they might want or not. And again, we never force anybody to eat anything. We celebrate an open mind, okay? Remember our second tenet, keep your mind open. You know, and today I want to challenge you. Today, and you can challenge your grown-up adult. Why don't each of you pick one topping, one vegetable, maybe even one fruit that you haven't tried as a pizza topping before, and you try it. That's the kind of open mind I'm talking about. Beautiful. We're almost to the end here, but I am bringing something really important. And I don't know if you can tell from the shape of this leaf what I'm working with today. This is a basil. Actually, it's Italian basil. There's many kinds of basil. But Italian basil is delicious in a pizza. A fresh herb is pretty delicate. So unless you're using like a hearty, a thick herb like rosemary or even thyme, you want to add your herbs at the end, after the pizza is ready. You're just gonna put a topping on there. Because if you put this very delicate leaf in the oven, it's gonna burn up, okay? So there's a couple ways of doing that. And I love this one way. We're gonna do it later. But I'm gonna tell you about it and we're gonna do it again. So there's this great way to get some of the smells out of a basil leaf, and I love it. You just put it on your palm and you give it a slap. Let's do it again. You put it on your palm, you slap it. Wow, so good. So when you slap this leaf, you kind of break some of the cells in there, and all that aroma kind of explodes out of the leaf. So if you have a basil at home, even if you have maybe some cilantro or some parsley, put it in your hand and give it and smell it, okay? So that's one way. And if I did that, I would just rip that leaf with my fingers and have it ready to go. But there's another technique to cut your basil. And it's a traditional technique that has a fancy French word that I am dying to show you guys and to say it. So for that, in that case, what I would like you to do is to pluck the leaves out of the basil stem and stack them. Check it out. I'm putting one leaf on top of the other here. And remember I told you to keep everything for a broth or soup later. That's going to our bowl. So once your leaves are all stacked up neatly, take the time to stack them up neatly, okay? We will roll it like a roly-poly, okay? And I start rolling. It's easier to start rolling from the stem end. hold them in place with one hand, and you will need somewhat of a sharp knife here. So either my older chefs or an adult. And you're gonna slice into thin slices. And those thin slices, when we unroll them, what do you think they're gonna look like? If you said like ribbons, you guessed it, okay? There we go. Basil leaves are very delicate, so as I said, you will put them after your pizza is cooked, and if you're not using all of them and you want to save some for later, a good idea is to wet a paper towel and cover them with a wet paper towel. All right, chefs, I think we are done with all our prep and with all our toppings. It is rolling time. So what do? We're going to clean our surface, wipe anything out of the way that we don't need. I'm actually going to put this beautiful plate of toppings slightly out of my way so I have a nice big surface to work with the dough. I don't need those right now. I'll wipe this up. We're gonna need the knife very shortly, and then we're gonna put it away too, okay? What I want you to do is to gather your dough, to gather a rolling pin, and to reach inside your kit to get an envelope that says dusting flour, okay? And while you are at it, get a little bowl or even like a shallow cup where we can put this dusting flour inside. Ooh, you know what? Remember I told you to save that empty cup where the flour for the pizza dough was? You can use that. And we're going to have to put that whole dusting flour into that cup or into your bowl. And the reason I do that is because it's nice for me to reach my fingers in there. So if you need to press pause, you're welcome to. I'm gonna meet you here with your ball of dough, with a rolling pin, and with your dusting flour, okay? Let's get to it. I have all my ingredients. Let's unwrap that dough. And by now, we gave it enough time to rest, okay? And I'm gonna set it aside here. You can discard this. And remember I said we're gonna use the knife very shortly. All I want you to do is to cut that dough in 4, because this is going to be our 4 pizzettas. And you heard that I'm calling this a pizzetta and not a pizza. And you know why? Because in Italian, a pizzetta is a small pizza. That's what it is. So here we have it. Before we start any of the rolling, we're gonna get the dusting flour and we're gonna dust our work surface. And you know what, little chefs? I'm gonna get another surface up here just to make it easier for me to clean up. We always wanna think ahead of the cleanup. Cleanliness is what? Awesomeness. So every part of the surface where the dough is going to touch needs to have a little bit of dusting flour. And that's to avoid any of that dough to stick on the surface. Sometimes we even like give a little dust of flour to a rolling pin, okay? And I'm gonna demonstrate how you roll this dough right now. So I like to start by making a ball and using my fingers to press on it. And see how I use my thumb and I push it to start making it to a round shape. It will make the rolling easier, okay? So once I have kind of like a nice little round disc, I'll put it down. I'll put a little bit more flour on top, and then we're gonna use a rolling pin. Rolling pins are amazing tools. If you don't have one at home, anything that you have is cylindrical, even like a water bottle or any other instruments that you can roll, you are welcome to use that. But for me, since I'm using my rolling pin, I kind of put my weight of my hands on top. And I roll up once, and I roll down once. And look at this. It got a little long that way, right? I give it a quarter turn, and now I roll up and down, and then it becomes a little more round, okay? So you can keep on doing that until this is about, I would say, 6 inches or 8 inches in diameter. And the diameter is a word from mathematics. And it means how big is from one side of the circle to another, okay? So this is really kind of about your taste. If you like a pizza with a little bit of a thicker crust, you can make it a little smaller. Maybe you stop right there. If you like a little bit of more of a thinner and crunchier crust, you can keep on rolling and making this a little bit bigger. So you can talk to your sous chef, or if you're cooking for someone today, you can always ask, how do you like this? It is so nice to show people love through food. And, you know, one of the ways is to know what they like to eat, right? So beautiful. Look at this. I think this is just the size and the thickness that I want. I'm going for about 1/8 of an inch. And that means, if you don't know what that is, I also didn't know. Just think of 2 nickels, two coins stacked up together, okay? And that's kind of the thickness you could go with. So I have my first one here. See how I have all this extra flour? I can tap it a little bit. And you notice that sometimes you roll it big, and as it rests, it will shrink a little bit. Feel free to stretch with your hands a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing with the second ball of pizza. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to tell you about the next step, okay? So you can listen as you work. First, remember, I start my disc by pressing with my thumb and fingers. Once it's flat, I'll make sure every little bit of the dough that touches the surface has a little kiss of flour, okay? And then I place my hands on top of my rolling pin, and I go up and I go down, and now it's a little long in one way. I turn a quarter turn, and I keep on working. Okay, so we have 4 pizzettas to make, correct? Yes. So I like, just to save time in the kitchen, after I roll my first 2 pizzettas, I will put them to par bake because they will take about 4 minutes, and I keep on working on the other 2. If that's too complicated for you and your adult sous chef, you're welcome to first roll all of them and put all of them in the oven to par bake and then work with them. Okay? So I want you to have a conversation with your adult sous chef if you're working with someone, or kind of make that decision. But I'm talking about par baking, and I didn't say what that is. Well, par baking means just a little, just initial baking, just when we put the pizzetta in there for a few minutes, just to cook up the dough a little bit, even before we put in the toppings. And that will make your dough a little bit more crunchy, okay? And it is not gonna absorb the tomato sauce. So as you can see, my second pizzetta is ready to go. So if you're following with me, we're going to go to the oven, and then we're gonna carefully are going to have to put these pizzettas on that sheet tray or on that roasting pan, or even you might have a pizza stone in the oven. You have to be really careful because that's going to be hot. If you're not doing that with me right now, you may press pause and keep on rolling the other 2 pizzetta discs before you move to this next step. How does that sound? Yes? Beautiful. Okay, so I'm putting this to the side. I'm going to move both. I'm going to move as much out of the way as I can, okay? So I'm moving my rolling board, my rolling pin out of the way. It is very important here that you either get your adult or that you are being as careful as you are, because what is our first tenet? Keep your body safe. And that's a situation where you could hurt yourself or burn yourself. So in my case, to keep my body safe, I'm getting just an oven pad. I'm gonna get that very hot sheet tray and put right here on my surface first, okay? Just hang on, let's do this. Check out how I do that. And I go kind of fast because I don't want this to cool down. And very carefully, without touching any part of my body, I'm just gonna put this on the sheet. I do not need oil there. I do not need parchment paper. You can put that straight there. And then don't forget your pad, and you're gonna go back, add back to the oven, put your timer to 3 minutes. Oh, I put for 3 seconds. Put your timer for 3 minutes, and that is the par baking. Now you decide, do you want to keep rolling that, or did you do that before? No problem. So once those are par baked, we're gonna meet back here, and I'm gonna teach you how to put the toppings. Does it sound good? So I see you in a second. So you will know that your pizzettas are par baked when you see them start to puff up a little bit. You see that? So I'm actually gonna just poke it up a little bit so that hot air can come off. You can please use the help of your sous chef here, and you can wait for them to cool down a little bit, and you can transfer them to your work surface, or even, you could even, to make things easier, you can even leave them on the pan, because this is gonna go back into the oven, okay? So I was showing that to you, but I will do the easy way. You have to make sure that this is cool enough, okay? And now it's time for art. So all of this is optional, how you wanna work it. I am starting with the tomato sauce, and what I like to do is just to put a little scoop of tomato sauce right in the middle. I use the back of a spoon to spread it around. Yum! And you can see the little bit of herbs of that oregano that we added in there. This smells so good. Beautiful. And now it's time to create, okay? I am starting with the cheese. And you see how I leave a little edge? It's just both pretty, and it's just to make sure that your toppings don't spill over. And this other one. And you know what? You know what I like to do? I like to think of this as almost like a little drawing paper. And remember I talked to you about I was gonna make a sun here? So check this out. So my squash are my suns. I'm gonna use these pretty little mushrooms as clouds. And I call this pizza art. And I'm going to use this as a little bit of a stem of a plant, and or a flower. Check it out. My tomatoes are the petals of the flower. You know, and this is just me. I really want to see what you create with your pizza. And the way I have to do it is, if you end up posting any of those photos to social media, please go ahead and tag us. You can put a hashtag Club Artistas, and we'll make sure to see and comment on your creations. I really want to see what kind of creativity you got into in the kitchen. And check it out. Oh, I said we're putting the herbs later. Woo! I almost made that mistake. And I'm gonna use my onions here as another art element. You know, it's really up to you what you wanna do here. All right, so once you're happy with your toppings, and don't be stingy with your toppings, make them colorful, add a lot of things in there. You know, I talked to you about maybe you could use some fruits. Do you know that a bell pepper and a tomato are actually fruits and not technically veggies? So today we have a pizza that has fungus, which is our mushrooms, has veggies, has fruits, has herbs. We're really going for the whole nature kingdom here. Beautiful. All right, so I feel good about the amount of toppings I have here, and I'm almost ready to put it back in the oven. So what you're gonna be looking for is for the beautiful cheese to start bubbling up, okay? And your veggies are gonna look cooked. There's one more thing I wanted to tell you. If you wanna make this extra special, you could use a pastry brush or even your fingers, if your fingers are clean and this is already cooled down. And you could like paint. Look, I am using my finger here and it's okay. We're in the kitchen. Our best two tools in the kitchen are two hands, okay? And I'm adding a little bit of olive oil to this crust around it. And that will make that crust even more delicious. If you have a pastry brush, you can use that too, all right? So our job here is almost done. All right, you probably have 2 more pizzettas to decorate and to top. And all of them are gonna take about another 6 or 7 minutes in your oven. And you know when the cheese is bubbling and there's a little bit of color, a golden brown color that starts to form in the crust, all right? Get your adult, get some help, and let's get those pizzas in the oven. I'll see you back here when mine are ready and I'm ready to show you. I want to add that delicious basil on top. A bit more here. In my family, we add a little bit of olive oil to our pizzas. Yum! It's up to you, but I recommend if you're not doing that yet, you really want to do that. Beautiful. And you see how I have all those veggies still? I encourage you to make our second recipe. We have a delicious salad recipe there. You can even make your own salad dressing. Also, in your kit, we have a STEAM activity this month, which is making Play-Doh. So it's very similar to the pizza dough you made, but it's a Play-Doh that you're gonna be able to sculpt into small vegetables. And the box that your kit came in can be transformed into a little fridge. That's gonna be so fun. So maybe you could even make the same vegetables that you use for your pizza today. You can sculpt them and play with that fridge. How fun is that? All right, all right. I think our job here is done. It's time to eat. Can we say cheers first? Cheers! Good job. We would love to see what you made. Please tag us with Club Artistas on any photos you post on social media. As we say in Italy, buon appetito, grazie ragazzi, time to eat and time to celebrate. As you know, we like to close these classes with a song. I hope you want to join me today. Thank you.
In my kitchen I play, I paint with the colors of the rainbow. The red of a tomato, an orange sweet potato, the yellow of an onion that I slice up on my table. A treat Artistas makes with you. In my kitchen I chop, I mix with the colors of the rainbow. Green herbs to top the dish, a bluefin tuna fish, the purple of an eggplant will fulfill my my every wish, a treat Artistas makes with you. Wherever in the world I go, I'll have a new plate to show. Sushi, pasta, escargot, I'll share with you. Wherever in the world I go, I'll have a new plate to show. Sushi, pasta, escargot, I'll share with you.